Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Lagoon House Press is a cooperative press that has published 4 works since its founding in 2015. Its partners are Garrett M. Brown, Barbara Crane, Bill Davis, and Marie Powell Brown. They came together because they share a mutual love for literature and wanted to control their own publishing destinies. The 4 partners have several more things in common. First, they were all mentored by Holly Prado Northup. Second, Holly not only played an important part in each of their lives creatively, she also inadvertently brought together both married couples in the press, Marie and Garrett, and Barbara and Bill. Third, they were inspired by Caoanga Press. In the fall of 2014, Laguna House Press will publish Garrett M. Brown's hybrid memoir/novel, 10C. This afternoon, Barbara, Marie, Bill, and Garrett will read, and Bill will show photographs from Lagoon House Press's latest publication, 3 writers, 1 photographer, an anthology comprised of their work. I love this new astonishing anthology. Barbara Crane is a novelist and short story writer. Her 2016 novel, When Water Was Everywhere, won the Beverly Hills Book Award for historical fiction. She is currently at work on a 3rd novel. Barbara's short stories and personal essays have appeared in a variety of publications, including the Los Angeles Times, Sun Magazine, the Birmingham Arts Journal, and Open Journal of Arts and Letters. Her travels in Latin America, India, the Middle East, and Africa have often suggested themes or settings for her work. Barbara grew up in Los Angeles and graduated from UC Berkeley. I love Barbara's writing. Here's an exceptional, passionate, spellbinding writer, Barbara Crane.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you very much. I'm going to start with my introduction to the 3 stories I have in this book. That will segue into my reading of one of the stories to give you a chance to read the rest on your own, dear audience, if you'd like. Always working. Writing is one of my great joys in life. To hunt for what I want to say, to find the right words to say it. I didn't know that joy until I was in my mid-30s, when I was released from a prolonged writer's block by the chance statement, long since forgotten, of USC professor of linguistics and rhetoric, Dr. Ross Winterrode. That quirky, brilliant man set me off on a path that has been frustrating at times, yet always rewarding. I keep at it, whatever I am working on, and I am always working on something. Most often, I write novels. At this time in 2024, I have published 2 novels and am working on a 3rd. It took me 10 years to write the first novel and 10 years to write the second. I'm in the 4th year of working on my current novel, wondering if it will take me another 6 to finish. Between novels, ideas for short stories surface. Each of my 3 short stories in this book were inspired by a unique circumstance. I have always loved the work of Mark Rothko, the 20th century abstract expressionist painter. The story, There Had to Be a Rothko, was prompted by an experience I myself longed to put into play as I stood transfixed in a room of Rothko canvases at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. There had to be a Rothko. Ruth sobbed the first time she stood in front of a Mark Rothko painting. In the middle of the art museum, in the center of the room, her head bowed to her chest, her hands covering her face. If the guards looked at her that quiet January afternoon as they strolled through the galleries, she wasn't aware. When her sobs had quieted to low gasps, she peered through her fingers to her shoes, both navy blue but not a pair. Her embarrassment at wearing unmatched shoes prompted her to flee the museum. She found her car in the parking garage and hurried home. For some weeks, Ruth avoided the museum. Retirement had left her with little money to spend. She had not accumulated family or friends or interests in her working years. Even the detritus of her career, well placed on the fireplace mantel and on tables next to the sofa, held no meaning for her. The only thing left to her was her impeccable taste. She never understood how she acquired that taste from her very average working class parents, but she had traded on it in every job, beginning with her first as assistant buyer for designer fashion at Saks Fifth Avenue in Beverly Hills, and ending as home furnishings buyer at Macy's 45 years later. Along the way had been 2 heady years at Bonwood Teller in New York, another at Bloomingdale's, and then back to California. Macy's in the Beverly Center was her last job. If the choice had been hers, she would have worked again in fashion at Bloomingdale's or chosen shoes for Neiman Marcus, but it wasn't. On Ruth's 65th birthday, the young human resources representative at Macy's gave her a month's severance and retained her practiced smile until Ruth left the office. No explanation given. Ruth didn't ask. Ruth missed the feel of fabric under her fingertips, the peau de soie when she began her career, the Indian silk of later years, the Balenciaga sweep of skirt, the complex hues of a Bargello stitched upholstered chair. Fabric was a sensual experience. She loved those brushes with elegance, temporary as they were. A month passed until she approached the museum again. This time she wore black pumps with sensible heels and not sensible, very pointed toes. These were her memories as she stood in the museum's room of Rothko canvases a second time. The lapis lazuli colored ceramic cup, a gift from her aunt on her 11th birthday. Her father's face a pasty yellow as he lay on the hospital gurney the last time she saw him. The shocking pink sundress she wore, backless and braless, to meet her Italian lover at the foot of Rome's Spanish steps. A porcelain bowl, its gleam of polished ebony so small, so expensive, that she should have bought on her first buying trip to Japan. Ruth waited until a group of high school students left the gallery before she again stood facing the Rothko canvas that had moved her to tears. A large black rectangle shaded into a blue that was nearly black. Above the black rectangle, another lighter blue, narrower than the one beneath. Above the blue, a larger one again, a blue-veined rust. All colors melted into their inky surround. Transfixed, she pondered questions she had rarely considered. What did it mean to be alive? What was it all for? She had dedicated her life to making women and their surroundings beautiful, giving no thought to what would come after. Ruth began to cry as she had the first time. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The tears became sobs. The sobs deepened. A thought interrupted her tears. She must spend a night alone with these paintings. She dismissed the idea. Impossible. The museum was guarded by day and certainly by night. There were cameras everywhere. She could see one in the ceiling corner now. She wasn't a thief who knew how to disable cameras or locks. She would be caught and end up in jail. Ruth made her way slowly through the museum's galleries, finding many canvases to admire. But no artist moved her the way Rothko did. Finally, she left. Again, weeks passed. She attended a book group at the local library and took long walks in her neighborhood. She shopped for groceries, careful to spend only the money she had allotted for food. She leafed through magazines collected when she was earning a salary. Through every one of her days, and as she tossed and turned at night, ran a persistent thought. I want to spend one night with the Rothkos, accompanied by a frisson of excitement. She vacuumed, swept her small kitchen, dusted the table she had owned for years until the refrain changed. I will spend one night with the Rothkos. By the end of February, Ruth had a plan. She began to ferret out certain clothes in thrift stores, plain colors, nondescript hats with wide brims that concealed part of her face. She rescued old worn shoes from her building's trash bins. Nothing like the clothes she usually wore, nothing that had any style. Wearing this cast-off apparel, she visited the museum several times late in the day when the galleries would be likely to have emptied out. The few guards that patrolled the rooms ignored her. Time passed more quickly during these winter days as she thought and rethought her strategy, focusing on one piece after another. Sometimes engrossed in a detail, she forgot to leave her apartment even to take a walk or shop for food. There were times also when fear overpowered her. At those moments, Ruth lay on her couch, covered by the worn comforter that had been hers as a child. She shook with terror at being discovered in the museum. Even more frightening was what awaited her if she succeeded, if she found herself in the Rothko room, alone in the dark.
Thank you, Barbara. Your sentences are exquisite and true, and it's really an exciting, enthralling story. It's just really, it's probably redundant to say it, but it's transfixing, and it's really, an illegal act that she does, but her passion just carries her through all that. And we have a couple minutes. We have a couple minutes before we invite Bill on. When did you first write your first short story, your first short stories in a regular, serious way?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think when I probably started working in Holly Prado Northup, your wife's workshop, I think it took me a long time to consider myself seriously as a writer, but I began to craft paragraphs or ideas that would be part of a story. So it was about more than 40 years ago. It's a long time, a very long time.
Well, when you begin a story or a novel, what is it that you focus on, or what kicks off the story? Is it idea, an emotion, phrases, a perception?
I think an emotion is what captures me. And I somehow sense a beginning, and at least for the first two novels and most of the stories, I see an ending, which doesn't actually have to be the ending, but somehow I see an arc, but I don't know what's in the middle. and I have to keep working to find out what happens.
Well, thank you for your wonderful writing, Barbara. I always really love your knowledge, your erudition in writing poetry, the craft that you put into it, and then the compelling story that you tell. So thank you very much, Barbara Crane.
Thank you very much, Harry. Thank you.
Bill Davis is a photographer, writer, and editor. His photographs have been published in Long Beach newspapers and on various websites. Bill is particularly enthralled with nature photography. Birds and whales of many varieties comprise a large part of his portfolio. His travels in North America, Asia, Africa, and Western Europe have inspired many compelling human images as well. Bill is the only partner in Lagoon House Press who was born in Southern California. He grew up in the San Bernardino Mountains and the San Gabriel Valley and graduated from California State University, Los Angeles. There's a stateliness and natural beauty in his photos. Bill Davis.
Well, thank you, Harry. I don't have any particular photographic aesthetic. My photography is really a nexus of fast twitch muscles and being in the right place at the right time. And also a willingness to carry a pretty heavy camera and lens to some fairly exotic places. Before I met Barbara, an exotic travel for me would have been to the far reaches of San Fernando Valley, which I guess would qualify as the MPTF. But anyway, she opened up horizons for me. And again, willing to take a camera with me when I go. Birds in their natural setting are compelling to me. And someone who knows a lot more about photography than I do once said, for a bird photograph to be successful, the bird's eye has to be in focus. And I sometimes have succeeded that. The bird's eye photos, one is of a blue-footed booby. This was taken at the Galapagos Islands, got close to this animal. Eye in focus. Luckily for me, we got fairly close to these critters. And there's another bird photograph coming up here. This was not adventure travel of this one. This was actually on the deck outside of our dining area. And this is a hummingbird. We have lots of hummingbirds. We actually feed them. I'm a sucker for birds. Anyway, hummingbird, eye in focus, in the rain. Raindrops in focus too. That was a double whammy. And I think the next photo will be of this is the whale eye. My favorite photo of all time is of a whale surfacing next to our panga. Panga, by the way, is a small boat. There were only, I think, about 6 of us in the small boat, and just luck of the draw. Beautiful animal. The mothers actually sometimes will push the young calf whales right up next to the boat. They're almost encouraging this interaction, which is an indication to me that they're very comfortable with people down there. This was in San Ignacio Lagoon in Baja California. It's where people go to whale watch. They can actually, believe it or not, touch whales. These are gray whales, by the way. And that whale coming up and just looking at us with that eye, and there's sentience in that eye. I mean, you can see the intellect there in that big mammal brain. By the way, that whale had probably been born within the last maybe month or two, spending the last little bit of time in San Ignacio Lagoon with its mother, where it is feeding, breastfeeding from mom. And then they begin their 6,000-mile trip back up to the Bering Sea, where all the good food sources are for them. So that was a really special time. And I think the next photo is going to be another. This is a finned creature. This is a striped marlin. I'm also a fisherman, by the way. And I do a lot of catch and release, but I also do catch and keep. Anyway, this is a striped marlin. I didn't catch this guy. Someone else did. They brought it up next to our boat. This was down in Magdalena Bay in Baja. And I took a photograph. Now, all the marlin are catch and release. No one keeps marlin. So this animal is out there swimming around, hopefully right now, living a happy life. Besides animals, I'm also intrigued by things in the built environment, especially like things that kind of repeat themselves, that have patterns. And I think a photograph that we'll show, I'm hoping, will show that built environment at a place called Kumbhalgarh, which is in India. Barbara and I have been to India. Well, Barbara's been 4 times and I've been 3 times. We're really fortunate to have a daughter-in-law who is Indian and Japanese, and she was born in Bangalore and raised born and raised in Bangalore. Well, here's the photo, by the way, there's the photo over here. This is Kumbhalgarh. This is a walled city in kind of central India. Really interesting juxtaposition of the walls and the other kinds of structures and a camel. Anyway, I want to thank Harry and the MPTF for hosting us, and I'll pass it back.
Thank you, Bill, for those precise, beautiful nature photographs. And, you used the phrase, eye is focus. You said that, I assume what you're talking about, you get that eye in focus, and that's the main thing. And, you just have such a sense of natural beauty, as I said when I opened this, and it's just it's pretty exciting. I want to just ask you a couple of questions. What was it, or what is it that attracts you to photography?
I've owned a 35 millimeter camera since I was 18 years old, stationed in Japan in the U.S. Army. It's interesting, at that time, photo equipment was pretty inexpensive for us, for GIs, and I got a camera. I basically had one ever since, and it's just kind of an extension of senses, and I enjoy that. And I've kind of really gotten into nature photography more so than any other kind. By the way, just so you'll know, right now off of Southern California, we have tons, well, literally tons, but many, many blue whales. They're all over the local ocean. You can go out on whale watch boats. I've been out, I think, 3 times in the last week and a half, and got some really good pictures of blue whales. With something called fluking, when they're bringing their tail up out of the water before they take a deep dive. So anyway, if anybody wants to experience nature firsthand, there's an opportunity.
What tips would you give to a young photographer starting out?
Well, I think that the main thing is that, you can't make a mistake. Just keep shooting. My philosophy is, if I take 100 pictures and 2 of them are worth keeping, I've really had a good time. Just trust your instincts, and don't overinvest in photo equipment until you really know that you want to do it. I've kind of eased into it. Here, let me show you. This is my baby right now. This is a little bit expensive photo equipment, but it really comes in handy for nature photography.
You mentioned you began when you were in the service. I remember I was in the Navy. I joined when I was 17, and I bought an Argus C3. You remember those?
I vaguely do. Yeah, I think my first camera was a Pentax.
Well, nowadays it's different, right, with all the digital.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Bill, you're just, everything about you, your photography, your narrative, everything is just so natural and clear. So you just make everything seem so easily done. I know you, as you said, you shoot a lot and you get a couple of good ones, but doing it is the main thing, right? The process. And thank you very much for your enlightening photos and taking us to some of the places that you've been to and what you have seen through the camera. So thank you once again, Bill Davis. Marie Palbraun was born and raised near Cologne, Germany. She has co-authored 3 works of lexicography. Her poetry has been included in various anthologies and literary magazines. Lawrence University has incorporated Daughter of the Enemy, her memoir about growing up in wartime and post-war Germany, into their German Studies department. She is currently working on a selection of epistolary essays chronicling her spiritual life. Marie was educated at Durham University, England, and the Academy for Applied Languages of the University of Munich. Love, spirituality, restraint, precision are evident in Marie's exquisite poems. They have touched me deeply. Here's Marie Powell Brown.
Thank you, Harry, and thank you for this invitation. And thank you to those who have joined on Zoom. I will first read the introduction to my section of this book, follow with 4 poems. The intertwining. I think of poems as dreams. Like sleep-time dreams, poems too rise from unknown depth. Both are mysterious. As uninvited visitors, sleep-time dreams find their cues in daytime events and spin their stories camouflaged in arcane language. Poems are invited guests. We welcome them, or perhaps they seek us out. They become visible in the imagery and musings that come upon us during waking life. The sight of a simple flower exposing its essence, a cloud in the sky revealing its spirit. In the poem, what is literal and what is metaphoric magically merge. I chose the 24 poems printed here from 6 of my collections written between 1997 and 2021. Venice Garden Poems, Your Broad Hands Touching Me, Phoenix Journal, Lagoon Poems, Abbey Poems, and a last poem that stands on its own. They are witness to my journey of literal experience intertwining with metaphor. This first piece is from Venice Garden Poems. October. Dawn casts a wash of gray onto the lavender walls. Shadows huddle in the folds of my eiderdown. In the painting above the dresser, the reclining nude, her harlequin lovers gaze upon her body, looks robbed of desire's flush in the low light. I take off my clothes, stand facing the mirror. Still shrouded in semi-darkness, the diffuse image of a much younger woman slowly comes into view. Her skin flawless, her breasts gently sloped. I wait for nature's daily sleight of hand when night turns into day. The leafy patterns take shape in the weave of the prayer rug beneath the window. Glow of sunrise tinges the painting's dark background. Arouse the nude, blushes her cheeks. In the mirror, I recognize the older woman, skin winter pale, left breast cancer scarred. I put on a flannel robe, warm slippers, step outside into my garden. I walk along the terrace path to the end of season splurge of color, marigolds, chrysanthemums, asters. The last of the roses flaunt their innermost petals, still fleshy pink, while the outermost petals look withered, their color gone. Come winter, I will prune the rose bushes to all but skeletal shapes, gather their leaves and stems for the compost bin. This next poem is from a manuscript, Your Broad Hands Touching Me, written to Garrett during our very long courtship. Like the hands of a working man. 1. A dark Cape Cod sky has swallowed the treetops. The rain will last for hours. Warm humidity fogs the cottage windows, moistens my tanned skin. Propped up naked against a pile of pillows, I read aloud from Gary Eberle's Sacred Time, the passage about sex as ritual, suspending the measured hours. Stay that way, you say, and fetch your drawing pad from the kitchen table. You join the pen point to the page. Your eyes are harnessed to the edges of my body as your hand to the contours it draws. A simultaneous tingle traces the corresponding line on my skin. Your gaze moves along the boundary that outlines my body's form. I am both flesh and tracing, both model and muse. 2. Late afternoon, we stand near the ocean's edge at Boston Beach, alone, but for a fisherman reeling in his line. Our bodies glisten in the weakening sunlight. Facing the waves, standing side by side, we move through our evening yoga practice. Sun salutations, lunges, warrior poses, tree. We finish, hands folded in post-perfect namaste, the hollows of our palms, cathedrals spaced. 3. We return to Southern California, you to Los Feliz, I to my Venice house and garden, where there's a problem with roots in the sewer pipe. A ditch needs to be dug to expose and mend the cracks. A job you offer to do on your weekend visit. Saturday morning, you mark off the area, position your feet, mindful not to trample the plants. You clasp the shovel hand, grip sure. You push the shovel into the ground, lift, balance, turn, then tip bladeful after bladeful into the wheelbarrow. Delicately, to preserve the tender root ball, you pull out a young palm near the offending pipe. Sweat trickles down your temples. You lean your forearms on the shovel's handle. Rub your sore hands. Survey the morning's work. Pleased. I think of lying with you on cool sheets, your broad hands touching me. This poem is from the Phoenix Journal. When you listen for it, there is nothing to hear. That is actually a quote from the Tao Te Ching, chapter 35. We walk in the early shadows of the Phoenix Mountains. My daughter's Sheltie pulling on her leash, then dropping back, circling behind our feet as if to herd us. The only sounds, the crunch of gravel on the path and the tags on the dog's collar, jingling. Dark patches of shale cloak the mountains' faces. Ribbons of trails snake up to the peak. Giant saguaros on the lower slopes, survivors from a past world, raise their arms into the wind-still air. My daughter's health is frail. We keep to the gentler flats, walk at a measured pace, follow a loop through spent desert grass. We cross dry arroyos of rock and driftwood, washed up by last summer's monsoon. I look up toward the mountains. I plead for answers to questions I dare not ask. My anxious glance strokes the scar, still pink and welted, above the left temple on my daughter's shaven head. The mountains keep their silence. This last poem is also the last poem in my section of the book. Night after George Floyd's murder. Dreamscape of endless graves, so many across the continent. The earth is dark, moist. I'm tended, potted mother-in-law tongues, row upon row upon row, striped blades, long and sturdy, like fingers pointing to the sky. In the overcast dawn, the same pots, now empty, dot the fields, 100 million and more, from the Pacific to the Atlantic. I scoop up soil and fill the pots. Into each center, I press a split open seed, sprinkle them with rain and holy water. Sunflowers on sturdy stalks shoot up fiercely, their petals a dazzling yellow, their centers a speckled brown. I watch as they grow, a sea of sunflowers swaying in the May breeze. My weeping wakes me up. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Marie. Your poetry, you have such understanding of writing and what you're doing, and there's a completeness with the body, mind, and spirit. It's inner, but yet it's outer, and it's also whether you're writing about, Garrett or your daughter or Floyd, George Floyd's death. You just have such compassion and love and care for what you're writing about. And it seems to me that you use almost, what poetry is a good thing to do is the objective correlative, and yet it's so complete and sensuous at the same time. And you're really just you're an amazing writer, Marie, the restraint that you have, and yet it just seems to build more feeling that way. It's never sentimental, it's just so precise. So thank you very much for your reading. I have a couple of questions for you. When did you begin writing poetry in a serious and regular way?
Well, I came to poetry rather late in life. I was in my mid-40s, which, as Barbara says, goes back a long time, almost 40 years. Yeah.
And before you began writing in a serious, regular way, who were some of the poets that influenced you?
Well, my all-time favorite poem is Rainer Maria Rilke, the German-speaking poem who was born in Prague, of Austrian descent. I just love his transcendent visions. I love his language, and it just speaks out of my own German soul.
I remember when we did the reading from the Duino Elegies, and you were the last reader, you read number 10, and you read it in English and then in German. And it was just incredible. And everything with you is precise. So, you're really a blessing, not only as a human being, but as an artist, as a writer, so a poet, obviously. So thank you very much, Marie Powell Brown.
Thank you.
Garrett M. Brown is an actor, writer, playwright, and visual artist. His poems have been read at Ensemble Studio Theater LA and published in the Biederman Chronicle. His plays have been produced in Los Angeles and New York City. His drawings and paintings have been exhibited around the United States, and his book, Tin Sea, which he calls, quote, a memoir gone rogue, end of quote, will be published in the autumn of 2024 by Lagoon House Press. He's married to the writer and poet Marie Powell Brown. They live in Long Beach, and like his creative comrades of Lagoon House Press, he too was mentored by the writer and poet Holly Prado Northup. Garrett M. Brown's writing is honest, open-hearted, inventive, compelling. Here's Garrett M. Brown.
Thank you, Harry. I feel like I heard a drum roll. That was great. Thank you so much. And it's great to be here, and really a treat for Lagoon House Press to be acknowledged this way. And we love your poetry hour. Thank you. I have 3 stories, and I'm going to read the second of the 3, an excerpt from it. It's called My New Yorker Cover. I was still living at home in Darien, Connecticut in the summer of 1972. I'd returned from 4 months of backpacking through Europe and had gotten a job as an orderly at Cortlandt Gardens nursing home in nearby Stamford. Cleaning bedpans by day, I was taking an acting class in the evening with Morris Karnofsky and his wife, Phoebe Brand. To relax, I'd visit bookshops in Darien and nearby New Canaan, and the one thrift shop in Darien. Bookshops to browse and see what was current, the thrift shop if I was going to actually buy a book, and Miss Birch's Birch Books at the corner of the Post Road and the Darien Railroad Station, if on those rare occasions I was going to do both. I was a man on a mission, but I wasn't quite sure what that mission was. Leaving college, I was pretty sure I wanted to become a painter, an artist. Once home from Europe, the love of writing, poems, stories, personal essays had begun to kick in. Then, with my evenings free, I saw in the local paper, the Stamford Advocate, an ad for this acting class. So I began investigating acting. I worked on a monologue from Hamlet with the Karnofskys as they helped inaugurate this new community theater in Stamford called the Sterling Barn Theater. I first saw Mandy at the New Canaan Bookshop on Main Street, maybe a 10-minute walk from the New Canaan train station. The bookshop was posh, full of well-dressed ladies, sales clerks ready to help, and even better dressed ladies, housewives of the businessmen commuters who were more than ready to buy. And then there was Mandy and I, both of us a bit out of place in that exalted setting. She with her loose-fitting, slightly risque attire, straps and loops and open spaces near her thin arms and along her bony back, and me in my loose khakis, sneakers, t-shirt, curly, mussed-up brown hair and glasses, with a sketchbook under my arm, a notepad in my back pocket. Neither of us was buying that day. We were both just browsing. Books at first, then one another. New Canaan was touted among all of us who had grown up in neighboring Darien, these exalted Fairfield County high-priced bedrooms of New York, as having the prettiest girls around. And Mandy was lovely, lithe, blonde, a very delicate kind of beauty. But she was thin, very thin, which for me was a deal breaker. So as I approached the art book section and stared at that very finely shaped, almost porcelain face with its sweet come-hither smile, I also realized how thin she was. I wasn't sure there was really enough there for me, tall, over 200 pounds, a mop-headed bumbler, to enjoy. She must have thought differently. In the dense midst of the art books, she was muttering to herself something about Bonnard, Pissarro, and Monet when she turned to me. Crazy, right? I beg your pardon? So polite. Look, they have Bonnard, they have Pissarro, but no Monet. How can that be? I now joined her as we scanned the shelves, tennis match style, going from the B's to the P's and back to the M's. Sure enough, not one book on Monet. Huh. More than more like horrible. The horrible pronounced with a fake French accent. Horrible. Of course, having just been in France, hoping to impress, I Frenchishly replied, bien sûr. She laughed. I laughed. Ice broken. That spring afternoon, we left the bookstore and headed down the block to have a coffee, or more likely back then a malted or a soda. We started when Mandy realized, oh dear, I just remembered, I have to be somewhere. I'm sorry. Okay, it's okay. But I'd really like to chat another time. Of course, great. When? How about... Mandy was an original with a sprightly, effervescent energy. She was a very lithe, limber, and seductive Diana, independent in some ways, somewhat needy in others. We did meet off and on that spring into summer in bookshops, coffee shops, out and about. She was an art history buff and an artist. I never saw any of her artwork. I was keeping a journal, writing poems and short stories. I also continued to do a series of pen and inks, town and country scenes, as well as a series of portraits from the nursing home, the elders, along with some of the orderlies and nurses. How it came up, I'm not sure. I had always enjoyed the New Yorker, grew up on its cartoons and covers, and harbored this distant fantasy, a lark, a joke. What if I could one day do a New Yorker cover? I never mentioned this to anyone, never pursued it, not seriously, until the afternoon Mandy met me at the Baskin Robbins on the Post Road in Darien. I had just finished my 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift at Cortlandt Gardens. I had my sketchbook with me. Mandy noticed it and asked if she could look. Sure. You always have a sketchbook with you, don't you? Since that first day we met. She began turning pages. Rather than turning the pages quickly, mindlessly, Mandy was really looking. Oh, these are very good. Oh, dear. Thanks. What? Well, I think I know that man. Is he a judge? In fact, he is. You know him? A friend of the family? My father's friend. Huh. Your dad's a lawyer or a judge? No, dad's a cartoonist. A very good one. Really? Well, that's kind of cool. It is. And so are these. Really, Garrett, you have real talent. Thanks, Mandy. This nursing home series is special, but like this one, were you on the train when you did this? Yeah. Late afternoon, coming back from the city, a whole bunch of commuters and this wonderful bald pate looming. This would make a great New Yorker cover. It's very real and very funny, too, in its way. Really? Really? Huh. Not huh, but vraiment. Again, the French accent. And again, my lame reply. Merci beaucoup. Your French is actually pretty good, your accent. Merci encore. Again, thanks. We laughed, sipped our ice cream shakes. She continued paging through my sketchbook until she suggested that I meet her dad. But why? Isn't he a cartoonist? For the New Yorker. Oh, man, I love the New Yorker. Me too, kind of. They own my dad. But Mandy, these aren't cartoons. I know, but this one, I'm telling you, it'd make a great cover with no color, just the black lines on white. You have a really wonderful line, kind of Matisse mixed with Jules Pfeiffer. Wow, I love them both. Thank you. I want my dad to see these. With any luck, he'd put in a good word with Lee Lorenz, the art editor at the New Yorker. And hey, you never know, right? Right? Funny, I was excited and not. I had learned to draw from Superman and Archie comics. I loved cartoons once upon a time. And then in college, I was mentored by the renowned American painter Fairfield Porter. Jury was still out concerning my artistic ambitions, since I now was intrigued with this acting class and had a growing love for writing. I wanted to be a serious artist, not a cartoonist. And yet, the New Yorker. The cover for the New Yorker? That would be something. Though, really? Didn't I have bigger fish to fry? I was very adamant about becoming a serious artist. But Charles Saxon. Mandy had told me her last name, but it never registered. Now it did. I got nervous. My God, Saxon. Those cartoons, satirical, often biting, sometimes heartwarmingly funny, that exaggerated X of his name, the way he signed it with a real flourish. My God, Charles Saxon, the New Yorker. Really? Here's where memory and fiction begin to do battle. I have this vague recollection that on an evening in early August, Mandy brought me to her parents' distinguished-looking two-story home with its expansive and very green front lawn. We passed through a heavy and slow-moving white front door into a living room with a grand bay window where her parents sat. Mandy's mother rose cheerily and bustled. Her father sat almost wearily and hardly budged. Introductions were made. I handed Mr. Saxon my drawings. Rather than my sketchbooks, Mandy had suggested I buy a black portfolio. With her help, we had ripped out the drawings, all pen and inks, about 20, and put them in an ascending order in terms of a gradual seduction of her dad's eye in the impressive black leather holder. I stood there like a fool, as if I expected him to open the black leather sleeves and have a look. He placed the portfolio on the floor beside him and watched Mandy, his wife, and me kind of gadfly about him. Actually, I just stood there, slow and dumb, while the two women did a lovely and charitable Q&A. Mandy: Garrett lives in Darien. Mrs. Saxon: How nice. Mandy: He went to Amherst, graduated last year. Mrs. Saxon: Good for you. Garrett, is it? Me: Yes, with 2 R's and 2 T's. Mrs. Saxon: Of course. Would you like something to drink, Garrett, with 2 R's and 2 T's? We all laughed, except for Mr. Saxon. He continued to slowly sip his drink, look out the bay window, and now and then give me an impartial once-over. Me: Oh, no, thanks. I just wanted to say hi. Mandy: Dad, you must look at Garrett's pen and inks. They're very good. One for sure, but maybe a couple others would make a great New Yorker cover. Mr. Saxon: He nods, raises his glass as if to toast. Me: Thanks, Mr. Saxon, for your interest. Mr. Saxon: He raises his glass again, another toast. Mandy: Please, Daddy, look at them and then put in a good word with your buddy, Lorenz. Mr. Saxon: Ah, Sir Lee Lorenz. Of course. Again, the raised glass, the feigned toast. Me: Well, it's a beautiful evening and I didn't mean to interrupt. I start to go. Mrs. Saxon: Oh, no, you mustn't leave. No, please stay. Join us for dinner. Mandy: Yes, Garrett, why don't you? Me: Oh, no, thanks. No, I'd better not. And great to meet you. And thanks, Mandy. I'll see you around, okay? I hope this isn't what actually happened. It reminds me too much of growing up in the 50s in those vaunted suburban towns of Connecticut. The drinking, the false cheer masking the downright sadness, or what was it? The story goes on, but I'm hoping maybe one of you will finish it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Garrett. You have surprises in your writing, which I love, and there's such a joy and humor and creativity, inventiveness, and there's also narrative strength. And your writing is clear and eloquent, and it just seems like you bring everything of who you are into your writing. Painting, acting. You're all one. There's no separation. And I have a question for you. Did you ever try to get that story published in the New Yorker?
I did send it off, but I don't know. I think they say wait 6 to 8 months, and I think I'm still waiting.
What causes you to write, in the first place? What caused you to begin writing? I know you're such a wonderful actor. I remember seeing you as McNamara.
Oh, yeah.
In a play on Electric Avenue in Venice, and you were just just magnificent actor on stage and on film and TV, as we all know.
Thank you,
When
Harry.
did you begin writing your first short stories, and what was it that caused you to write it? And then when did you begin writing in a serious, regular way?
Yeah, it's funny because, in my studio, thanks to Maria, it's a 2-story studio. And on the second floor, I have a column of books and journals. And so I have journals dating back from age 14. And I brought my daughter up there and showed her all these journals lined up on the shelf. And I said, these are yours. And she looked at me and said, yeah, that's great, Dad. Do you think you could have them digitalized? So, the writing never really was serious. I just, I remember the first thing I wrote about was my paper route when I was like 13 or 14. But yeah, I've always kind of kept some degree of writing going on. And I think, back then in the early 70s, when I first moved to New York, I was just experimenting with writing. I had notions of writing a play, and I thought, that'll be down the road. I was just, very free kind of stream of consciousness, writing, experimenting, trying things. I was excited by all different kinds of expression. I was exposed. The man that I studied painting, Fairfield Porter, he was a wonderful critic of painting, and his writing was very succinct. And then it was when I was really living in LA, and I was working on a show called Sisters, that I thought, I really want to start to take this writing more seriously. And I went to Chevalier's books on Larchmont Boulevard, and there was a young woman there, Erin, who was, and I just said to her, you aren't in a writing group or anything, are you? She said, oh yeah, I have a wonderful writing mentor named Holly Prado. So I gave Holly a call, and she said, yeah, why don't you come over? I should warn you that they're all women in the workshop. And I said, oh, no, that's fine. And she said, and you can't really audit. You have to, I think you should just come for like a month, 4 sessions and see what you think. So that's when I kind of began to, I think, treat it much more seriously. And thanks to her and that wonderful group of people who were all really dedicating themselves to that craft. And I really began to see it as a craft. And that became very exciting.
Why don't Barbara, Bill, and Marie come on? And we're about ready to go to our next show. Television waits for no man or no woman. And so we've used our time pretty exciting. I would say I just love all your writing. I love the book. It's really just such an astonishing book right here. And, the cover by Bill and all of you are just, it's just so moving and so of the here and now. And it's just really a memorable reading. So I want to thank you all once again. Barbara Crane, Bill Davis, Marie Powell Brown, and Garrett Brown. And now I'm going to tell what our next reading is. Next Tuesday, the terrific poets John M. Barger and Jeff Walt will be with us. So that's our show. And here's our wonderful director, Allegra Leedom, to take us home. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you so much. Thank you.